Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic for you today. Let's do it. We're looking today at the creepiest encounters at night. Please remember to like, share, comment, hype, listen and ask for shoutouts, and subscribe.
A few buddies and I used to be into ghost hunting in high school. There was this creepy 19th century graveyard in my town, sort of tucked back into the woods off of a desolate road, that we'd sometimes go to at night for shits and gigs. I had one of those talk boys from Home Alone, so I'd take that, and we would ask the spirits questions to try to excite some EVPs or whatever. Really, we were just looking bored. So one night around midnight, we decided to go. It had recently rained and was still drizzling a little bit, so the atmosphere was pretty spooky. As we were walking up, sort of laughing and joking to ourselves, one of my buddies stops dead in his tracks and is just staring toward the center of the graveyard, where there's a small, dim street lamp. Shit you not, faintly illuminated by the light, there's a group of 5 or 6 people dressed head to toe in black hooded robes, sitting Indian style in a circular formation. We're out of earshot, so we can't really hear if there's any chanting or dialogue, but we just kind of sit and watch for a second. Suddenly we see another one emerge from the woods, holding a lantern, slowly walking toward the group. This sort of did it for us, so we turned and legged it out of there. We still have no idea if that was a cult or what, but it scared the out of us. Brakes went out of my car, way out in the boonies, probably 10 miles from the nearest town and a few from the nearest house. I went into a ditch where I split my head open pretty good on the side window and broke my arm and a few ribs, so I'm in pain. It's pretty hard to breathe, and it's circa 1997. I didn't have a cell. Nothing to do but start walking. It was a moonless, cloudy night, in other words, pitch, and I mean pitch black. I could only tell I was still on the road by the sound of my feet mating on the concrete. Couldn't see my hand in front of me, so here I am in the middle of nowhere, bleeding out of my head from a gash that went on to need 35 stitches, a broken arm, broken ribs, and I can't see my hand in front of me. And what do I hear behind me? The warbling call of a coyote, then another, and another. Next thing I know, there must be 20 of them, and they sound like they're in a damned blood frenzy. Now, under normal circumstances, I could probably take a few coyotes, but I can barely lift my broken left arm, and even moving my right arm makes my ribs feel like they're on fire. So I realize I'm in a very serious amount of trouble. There's nothing for it but to keep walking. They're close now. They can't be more than 100 yards. Finally, I see the light of a house in the distance. I want to run, but I don't. I maintain pace, walk up to this place, and with no amount of manliness in my voice, I proceed to bang very loudly on their door and beg for them to let me in. Finally, some old man answers the door, pulls his gun on me, and asks what I'm doing banging on his door at 2 a.m. I got in a car crash and there's coyotes after me. Please let me in so I can call for help. Guy grabs and shines a mag light back at me the way I had come, and sure as shit, had to be 25 to 30 coyotes. Seriously, if that house was another mile away, or if I lost consciousness in the crash or on the road, I'd have been eaten. I was in my first semester of college, and I was in a relationship with one of my best friends from high school I don't even recommend. I used to spend the night over at his house a lot, which his mom was not too fond of, but I did anyways. Let's call him Manny. Well, one night I'm at his house, and he wakes me up. Around 4 a.m, I'm not very happy as I hate being woken up, but he asked me to lie down on his sofa on the other side of the room so his mom wouldn't see me if she opened the door. She leaves for work at about 4:30 a.m. I immediately move to the sofa and fall back asleep, but wake up not too long afterwards because it was so damn uncomfortable. I try to reach for my phone so I can use the flashlight to get around and find my glasses, but it's dark and I can't find them. I look at the alarm clock on the desk and it's about 5:30 in the morning. Now this is when things get weird. I look up and see my boyfriend at the time lying awake on the bed. He was lying on his back and playing with his phone. Even though it was dark, I could tell because he had his glasses on and the light from his phone was shining on his face, reflecting off his glasses. "Manny, can I come back to the bed now?" He leans up a little, looks at me, and lays back down, and back at his phone without saying a word. Manny, this is not comfortable. Can you check if your mom left? He leans up a little, looks at me, and lays back down at his phone without saying a word. Manny, can you please get up? He leans up a little and repeats the same exact thing. When I find my glasses, I'm going to kick your ass. I try to search for where I might have kicked my phone and glasses for a few minutes and have no use. So I look back up to ask my boyfriend to help me. Manny, can you? I froze. When I look back up, there's no one there. I try not to panic a lot, and frantically look for my glasses and phone with no use. I sat by the closet and started to shrivel. My boyfriend comes in a few minutes later and asks me why I was by the closet. He turns on the light and immediately asks me what's wrong when he sees my face. Manny, you were just in here a few minutes ago, right? He tells me no, he's been in the kitchen talking and having breakfast with his mom for the past hour. I beg him not to be joking. This is serious. And he knows I don't like this kind of shit. After I explained to him what happened, he said, I wish I could say I was joking, but I swear I was never in here. The afternoon, he told me about other creepy stuff that happened in his room. Never spent the night there again. Back in the mid-80s, I was camping with my parents and a friend next to the Columbia River in Oregon. It was at one of those KOA type places my mom liked, but pleasant enough given that it wasn't overly crowded while we were there. My friend and I slept in a tent pitched next to the trailer and were up really late one night playing Risk and drinking copious amounts of soda. Both of us had to go to the bathroom and decided to go up to the camp's facilities instead of waking my parents by using the trailer toilet. Everyone else in the camp was fast asleep, but it was really noisy out due to all the frogs and crickets. On the walk up, neither of us were talking. About halfway there, and the hair on the back of my neck started to stand up, and I got this weird chilled sensation. My friend stopped and put his arm out to stop me and put his finger to his lips in a gesture to keep quiet. That's when I realized that there was no noise anywhere. No frogs, no crickets, nothing. I had this urge to bolt back to the tent, but it wasn't strong enough to actually get me moving. I looked over to my friend and he was staring up at the sky. I looked up too and didn't realize to my left what I was seeing until the stars started appearing, slowly appearing from left to right. It was as if something gigantic was in the sky, blotting out the stars. But with the way the stars were reappearing, it must have had a straight trailing edge. Imagine yourself holding a big piece of cardboard above your head at night, moving it from left to right. It felt like that. No lights though, no color, no noise. Only the sensation of nothingness, slowly moving off to our right. I don't know how long we watched, but by the time the stars had all reappeared up to the tops of the trees over by the river, the frogs and crickets had started to make noise again. We talked about what we thought it was before falling asleep and decided to keep quiet about it the next day in hopes of hearing someone else in camp talking about it. But we heard nothing. We stayed there for a couple more days after that, but nothing out of the ordinary happened. By the way, the weather while we were there was beautiful with no clouds or fog. It still creeps me out to this day, but at the same time it fascinates me as to what it might have been.
A couple days ago, one of the commenters asked, since I always say a good topic for you today, if there are any that I like more or less. And throughout the years I've shared, I enjoy the conspiracy videos. I enjoy the medical, creepy, weird diagnosis videos, although they're tough to read, first responders. And so, yeah, along those lines, woods and hunting and hiking. I'm a big hiker, and I do love the woods, so that always resonates with me. I like all of it, really. You know, you guys know how I feel about supernatural, and you all definitely know how I feel about Ouija boards and the state of Ohio. But, you know, it's mostly just joking. Although, don't mess with Ouija boards. Anyway, have a great day, guys.
I've seen shadow people, glimpses in the corner of my eye, and heard noises coming from other rooms, but what I experienced in the summer of 2013 just isn't normal. What happened was, I was night fishing off the shoreline of a narrow, rocky pier with two of my cousins. We were going to do an all-nighter and go home in the morning. Everything was normal. We cast out the lines and rebaited after every 20 or so minutes. We gotten bites on the line and big strikes, but nothing gets hooked. This kept going until 1 a.m. and I was explained every moment. I don't believe in anything like ghosts or paranormal stuff, but I now believe in something else. I had a pole set out at the point of the rock pier and the bell started ringing off. On this night, it was pitch black and our only source of light was 2 flashlights and 1 lantern. My older cousin was sleeping at the base of the rock pier with the lantern and a flashlight. My younger cousin goes to rebait his other poles, and I lend him my flashlight to use. He checks his lines and they're both cut, so he goes back to set up his jig. I hear the bell go off on one of the poles at the end of the rock pier, so I book it there, jumping on every rock. I make it there, then the bell suddenly stops. I wait to see if it's still on the line, but nothing. I reel in the line and see that my bait is still there, but my lead line was cut. I look at it closely through the pure darkness, and it looks like a clean cutoff, and I'm confused. This is where the dump happens. I grab my pole and go to walk back, but I get an eerie feeling on my face and chest and stop with my back to the ocean while I'm facing land. This voice, a voice that sounded like an old lady mixed with a young girl that has a dry throat, calls to me. It's a soft noise. It sounded familiar to my name, but a lot of people don't say my name right, and it sounded like my name. I try to walk forward and it hits me with louder, more monosyllabic speech, yelling what seems to be my name. I'm paralyzed. My whole body feels weird, like something is wrapped around me, and I see something emerge out of the right side of the rock pier. I can't see through the darkness, but it was a human-like figure with glowing yellow eyes. I heard the big splashes as it came out of the water. Right now, I cycle through what I've done in my life and that I'm going to die here. And it will be another story of getting swept away to the sea. But I yell my loudest for my younger cousin, and I'm bawling in tears, screaming for him. I hear a huge splash, and then I feel like I've been released from whatever paralyzed me. The creature was gone, and I went back to grab my poles in the morning time. Never again have I gone there, and I don't think I would ever want to experience that again. Some local fishermen I've spoken with said it was a mermaid, bringing me into the ocean. I still don't know. Back in 1995, I moved into an apartment with another girl. Before we moved in, the landlord disclosed to us that someone had broken in and R'd one of the previous tenants. She had seriously amped up security before she rented it to us, and the price was really good, so we moved in. Nothing really weird happened for the first few months we lived there. It was at the time kind of a sketchy neighborhood, but not so bad. Mostly youngish college students and old people who had lived there forever. There were quite a few bars and cafes nearby, and some of our friends lived down the street, so we felt pretty safe. Until the day when I went out on the porch to have a smoke and discovered that my roommate's window screen had been cut. We were freaked out, but we told our landlady, and she put up new screens and something else having to do with the alarm system or windows. Glass break sensors, I think. A few nights later, I was going to bed around 10. I went to go pull down my window shade and happened to glance into the yard. Not 20 feet from my window was a dude in his 20s wearing dark clothes, staring into my window. He grinned in a really creepy way when he saw that I had noticed him and started moving toward the window. I noped out of there and went screaming into the living room where my housemate and her boyfriend were watching a movie. I could hear some scratching noises coming from my room when I was running out, but once I started screaming, they stopped. We called the cops and they came and found footprints in the grass and marks from a tool on my window frame. It freaked my shit out. The landlady installed window bars, but I just never felt safe there after that. Ended up moving out a few months later. Just thinking about it 20 years later makes me shiver. It was definitely the creepiest thing that has happened to me. Now I don't want to walk outside in the dark ever again. About 2 years ago, I got a message on my phone from a high school friend I hadn't run with in about 30 years. He told me he'd be in town in about a month, just in time for the beginning of deer season, and was looking to go hunting. I called him back, and we caught up for a few minutes, and I gave him my address. He showed up around noon a few days before we planned to head out. So we talked of old times and the toll the years had taken on us. Before we knew it, We were loading up the Jeep, filling up on gas on our way out of town. Uneventfully, we arrived on my 200-acre plot. I did a quick walk around of the Jeep before we ventured out on the trail to my hunting positions, checked the tire pressure, and soon we were in the blind, loaded and waiting. Over the course of 4 days and nights, sleeping under the stars, sitting in the blind and tracking, we managed a 6-point buck and a larger doe. With the sun setting, the recently shot doe tied to my roof rack and a buck, which had been field stripped and packed with dry ice in the cooler where we were off. Creepy starts here. I was taking the trail out slow due to the darkness and recent rain, and soon it became apparent that we must have taken an incorrect turn, as the ride in had taken about an hour and we were going on 4. So I stopped on a relatively dry piece of earth and pulled out my handheld GPS and map. After 10 minutes of the GPS being unable to find a lock, I handed it off to Jeff and pulled out a compass, placed it on the dash, and continued on towards what I could only assume was out. After heading in the same direction, taking what looked like trails, we were exhausted. The GPS was dead and I was running low on gas. We laid back the seats as far as we could with the gear in the back and tried to sleep. I woke up to a loud crack and was faced with a man wearing tattered jeans and a t-shirt kneeling on my hood and a crack running the length of the windshield. With a subhuman growl, he swung again and put a spider crack in the passenger side of the glass. Scared out of my mind, I twisted the keys in the ignition and quickly realized I had left it in gear as we lurched forward. Without taking my fingers off the starter, I slammed my foot into the clutch, and as soon as the engine roared to life, I put my foot to the floor of my vehicle. Fortunately, I was successful and reached for my overhead so I could see where I was going and narrowly avoided hitting another similarly large-dressed man. I heard the distinctive crack of large caliber firearms, which only made me attempt to go faster. Soon I was pushing 25 miles per hour on a relatively technical trail, skipping my smash plates off trees and taking out smaller ones with my stinger and large steel front bumper. Almost on cue, I saw the glow of a street lamp and heard my rear window shatter, followed instantly by the crack of a gun. I let nothing get in between me and this escape. I pulled onto what amounted to a small 2-lane paved path, grabbing gears. Not caring that I was still locked in 4-wheel drive, I hit around 60 miles per hour with every part of my Jeep screaming. I spotted a gas station. I pulled in and got her back in 2-wheel drive, leaned against my Jeep and began to fill it up, assuming I had left the crazies far behind. I was wrong. The pump clicked off and I walked inside to pay and find out where I was to call the police. I made eye contact with the cashier, who was wearing a black t-shirt and ripped up jeans. He said, "You still aren't welcome here." I turned and was back in my Jeep before I even realized what I was doing and left 11S across the parking lot, something I didn't even know a Jeep could do. I didn't know where I was or where I was going, but that didn't matter in the least. We needed to get out. I found the highway we had come in on, Highway 57, and settled in, listening to the wind howl through the shattered rear window. That was still fully reclined in the passenger seat. I shook him to wake him up, but I realized his eyes were open. He just shook his head and wouldn't speak to me. I drove past the house and straight into town as the sun was peeking over the horizon and pulled into the local law enforcement officer station. I went inside and calmly requested to speak to an officer. After a few minutes, Officer Harris walked out to meet me. We shook hands and I asked him to follow me out as I recount my tale of the previous night. I almost don't think he believed me until he saw the shattered rear window and the bullet hole in the tailgate. He opened the tailgate and found the bullet had gone into our meat cooler. Soon we had almost a whole bullet. He took my report, the bullet, and a few pictures and offered Jeff medical assistance. He said something I will never forget. "They aren't real. They follow me everywhere. They hate me. They hate the real world." I didn't say anything the whole ride home, and almost as soon as we were back, he pulled his bags from my Jeep, and without so much as a goodbye, he left. I was 16, walking home from my Chinese girlfriend's house after a night of making cookies. It's like 5 a.m. at a school night or day. I see a guy walk onto his lawn to grab the morning paper. Sprinklers are on. As I'm getting closer, I notice that the guy isn't wearing any clothes. Being the awkward kid I was, I crossed the street to the other side of the block. This was in a suburb, so the naked guy runs through the sprinklers with a newspaper in his hand. I try not to stare because, hey, it's his sprinkler. He can do anything he wants with it. I try to walk as briskly as I can until I'm squarely in front of his lawn on the other side of the road. It's in this moment when he realizes that he has a spectator. There's an awkward split second where we lock eyes and his face turns beet red. He tries to say something but only blubbers some incoherent form of English. Before I get a chance to utter a single word to diffuse the situation, he charges at me. Yes, this naked, cold, wet man armed with a soggy copy of the New York Times is running at me, planning to do God knows what, hurtling toward me in all his saggy, ball, man-titty glory. I follow my instincts and run as my house is only 5 to 6 blocks where I am, but I realize that once I make it home, this guy will know where my house is. Plus, I don't want to wake my parents up after I snuck out to make cookies. My house is 2 blocks from an elementary school, so I run there. As soon as I get onto the school grounds, I whip around and confront my pursuer. Hey man, you don't want to walk into an elementary school without clothes on. We're both huffing and puffing, sucking for air. He doesn't care. At this point of the story, I should probably mention 2 things. 1, I was in the back entrance of the school, and 2, the school's campus was gigantic for an elementary school. I'm talking like it had room for 3 soccer fields and a baseball diamond. So there I am running in an open field with a naked, crazy man at my heels. I've had enough mental damage at this point, so I start screaming for help out of desperation. I don't even remember what I screamed, but I'm sure it was something along the lines of, "Don't you touch me, wet man." As I get to the front driveway, I see a cop car parked with its lights off. I guess he heard me screaming because he immediately gets out and assumes the position needed to tackle the shit out of me. Without missing a beat, I point behind me and say, "Help, naked guy." I keep my eyes ahead and I can see the exact moment on the cop's face when he realizes what I'm running from. Like an expression of pure disbelief, dumpster, the cop changes targets and decides to rescue me. I run past the cop and the next thing I hear is the sound of 2 men grunting and a thud. I turn around to see the cop has apprehended saggy balls. He still has his paper. Knowing that the cop will want a statement from me and remembering that I'm currently sneaking out of my house to make cookies, I sprint home. I stayed home from school that day and I never walked on that block again to this day. I believe I was about 10 years old and I had gone to bed like usual. At about 11 p.m. it was a regular night, but something was off. 5 minutes after lying down, I started hearing someone typing on a keyboard coming from the room next to mine. I thought my father might be working on some stuff on the computer. The internet wasn't as popular as it is now, but I also heard someone watching TV in the living room, so I asked, "Hey Dad, what are you doing?" And he says that he's watching TV. The typing continues. I ask, "And what's Mom doing?" "She's already in bed," he answers. The typing continues. I was one of those kids that didn't like bothering grown-ups with stuff they might think is silly, so I got up and checked the room out myself. When I'm up, the typing suddenly stops. I turn the lights on and there's no one there. Nothing out of the ordinary too. So I go back to bed, believing it was my imagination. 1 minute after typing and lying down, the typing starts again. I was getting creeped out, so this time I called my father. I heard him get up and slowly walk toward my bedroom. When he reached my room, I asked him, "Can't you hear a weird noise like typing?" He said he couldn't hear a thing. So I tell him he can go back to watching TV. 2 minutes after, the typing starts again. I yell, "Dad, come here quickly so you can hear that noise." He actually rushed to my bedroom this time. So I thought, yes, he's going to hear it. From what I heard from his footsteps, the moment when he was at a hearing distance from the typing, it stopped. It stopped right now. "Were you able to hear it, Dad?" He didn't hear a thing. He asked me if the living room's light or the TV sound was bothering me. And I just said I didn't. I wanted him to check out the room next to mine. I got up and together we searched the room. The keyboard was quiet as it should be. The room was completely normal. He then sends me to bed and asks me to try real hard to sleep. I lay down again, and I hear him turning off the TV. the lights, and then I hear his footsteps as he goes toward the bedroom. 2 minutes after that, the typing resumes. I was really freaked out. I shut my bedroom's door. The sound got a bit more muffled. I tried really hard to sleep, like my dad said, and I eventually fell asleep. When I woke up, everything was quiet. That was the only night I heard it, but I can still remember it like it was yesterday. I really doubt it was my imagination. If it was, I probably would have heard it more times than just the one night, right? I was about 13 and was camping with the Girl Scout group in these woods over by the local elementary school. We rented cabins and got settled in. While unpacking, a fellow scout seemed really nervous, but I assumed it was her first time camping, or maybe she didn't like camping. It was near dusk and the scout leaders gathered us to eat and tell stories, basically to just goof off. The girl that I mentioned was even more nervous. She had barely spoken a word to anyone, so I asked her what the matter was. And she looked at me and said with a shaky voice, "There's someone out there." I kind of wrote it off because we were at camp and you'd think, of course, but there would be people around. I just patted her shoulder and went off to grab some snacks. Some time goes by and I'm feeling really drafty, like cold spots and slight breezes running through our cabin. And this was around the time we had to get ready for bed. That girl was bedded next to me and there were 2 other on the other side, 4 beds placed per corner, who were talking amongst themselves. And I was trying to talk to the nervous girl about anything to try to get her to open up a bit. Sometime later, the other girls are sleeping, and I couldn't. I had this fear of complete silence and darkness together. The nervous girl was breathing kind of heavily, as if she was starting to have a panic or anxiety attack. So I turned over to her to ask what's wrong, and she said with her voice barely above a whisper, "There's something stalking our cabin." I immediately freak out internally, and my eyes dart to the window opposite of me. Nothing. The window behind me. I was so scared I saw the top of someone's head, only down to the bridge of the nose with fingers resting where the mouth should be. I froze. Tears started to flow out of fear. This thing stared at me for only a few seconds, but it felt like hours, and I couldn't scream out of fear that the thing would just come and get me. Or also, if the scout leaders came to investigate, they'd only think I was just imagining things. I knew the system. I knew she saw it too by the look on her colorless face. Years later, I looked up if there were any hauntings in that area or something that might explain what we saw. Turns out a local farmer killed some girl back in 1993 just outside those woods, where she not only was, I was scared shitless or suffered nightmares for a while due to it, but it felt evil. I remember the eyes looking merciless and powerful. Gives me goosebumps all over again.